Hello, third graders. I picked a book for you this year. It's called Harold and Chester Scared Silly. We are here at the Jack Show, by the way, enjoying all the jack-o'-lanterns. And at the end of our story, I'll do a little camera scan there so you can see all of the jacks that we have. It's not as many as we normally have every year, because normally we have all of the real carved ones that you guys bring in. But we're doing a virtual one this year, so I set them all up for you. And do you remember last year we read Bunnicula? So I'm reading to you this year, and Bunnicula was such a great book. We loved it. I'm reading Harold and Chester in Scared Silly, a Halloween treat. There they are, and it's all our favorite characters from Bunnicula. So let's just get right into it, shall we? A note to the reader, it says at the beginning. Remember, Bunnicula started with a letter too. The story you are about to read is told by a dog, just like Bunnicula, but Harold is no ordinary dog. He's written other books about his family, the Monroes, and about his friends, Chester, a cat, Howie, a dachshund puppy, and Bunnicula, a most unusual rabbit. When Harold sent this story to me, he enclosed the following note, and it said, Halloween is usually a lot of fun at our house. The Monroes really get into the spirit of things with homemade costumes, decorations, and treats, and I could hardly wait. But this Halloween was different. Oh, the costumes and the jack-o'-lantern and the candy were the same, but something new was added, a real reason to be scared. And I still get goosebumps, or are they ghost bumps, when I think about it. I hope my story won't keep you awake at night, but if it does, just remember, even scary stories can have happy endings. Well, I liked Harold's story, but it didn't scare me so much that I couldn't sleep. After all, it's only a story. And besides, I always sleep better with the lights on. Don't you? And here we go. All day long, the sky had been crawling with clouds, as mean and as restless as ghosts on the prowl. There's going to be a storm tonight, Chester predicted, as Mrs. Monroe called us into dinner, and we'll be all alone in the house, and who knows what might happen. What do you mean, Howie asked. Howie was only a puppy, and I didn't want Chester scaring him, so I said, he means we might get sick to our stomachs if we eat too many treats. Howie looked at Chester. Chester looked at me. Yeah, something like that, kid, he said, and Howie gulped. Nice going, Chester, I muttered over my food dish. You just had to frighten him, didn't you? Well, it is Halloween, Harold. I've heard that Halloween, Howie stammered, that's when the goblins come out to play, and the witches and the ghosts and the ghouls. Don't forget the skeletons, said Chester. They'd be hurt to the bone if you left them out. So Howie darted from the room, his toenails clicking madly on the linoleum while Chester chuckled. Very funny, I said. Oh, come on, Harold, don't be such a party pooper. Being scared is what Halloween's about. I guess you're right, I said, remembering the harmless scares of Halloween's past, and I looked around, and it seemed like an ordinary enough Halloween. Mr. Monroe was busy carving a jack-o'-lantern. Toby and Pete were fighting because they didn't want to have to go trick-or-treating together. You walk too slow, Pete told his younger brother. You run ahead and try to lose me, Toby said. Boys, said Mrs. Monroe, who was rushing to finish the costumes she and Mr. Monroe were wearing to the party that night. Bunnicula was sleeping in his cage, and I knew he would wake up once it was dark, and I wondered if he was looking forward to Halloween. After all, since he is a vampire rabbit, at least Chester says so, I imagined, well, Halloween might be a special night for him. I didn't think much about it, though. Eating always makes me drowsy, and it wasn't long before I was sound asleep. By the time I woke up, it was dark outside. The Monroes were gone. The wind was howling, and the windows rattled, and the doors and Howie shook. What a racket, he cried. What's going on? Nothing, Chester said with a yawn. Just some creaking bones. It's the storm, I told Howie, giving Chester a dirty look. Well, Howie jumped up onto the sofa and gazed out the windows. Who are they? He asked. Goblins, looking for puppies to munch, said Chester. Kids in costumes, I explained. They're trick-or-treating. Look, Howie, Chester's just trying to frighten you. Well, that's the fun of Halloween, being scared. But there's nothing really to be frightened of. There was a gust of wind. And still, the lights went out. Except maybe the dark, I added in a tiny voice. The three of us huddled by the sofa, looking around at the eerie shadows cast by the jack-o'-lantern's light. And from across the room, Bunnicula stared at us, his eyes gleaming, his teeth glistening, his shadow making him seem twice as big as usual. And there was something in the way he looked at us that held us spellbound. Tip, tap, tap. There came a knocking at the door. Howie was out of sight before I could say, "It's only a tree branch." "There's no tree near the front door," Chester pointed out. "True," I said. Tap, tap, tap. "Trick or treat?" I asked. And slowly the doorknob began to turn. "Trick!" Chester yelled. We ran behind the big brown velvet armchair, and Howie was cowering there already, panting rapidly. Who's at the door?" he asked. "The wind," I answered. But then the door flew open. "Uncle Harold," Howie said. "Yes?" "Does the wind wear a hat?" The wind just kicked up right now. Look at this. Wow.
It's crazy.
Well, there before us, not 10 feet away, stood a witch. "What a night," she said, her voice so rough it seemed full of gravel, and she dropped a bag on the floor and rubbed her hands together, and then the door slammed shut. I should have the door open here so the wind could come rushing in. Well, the witch came toward us, but stopped when she reached the jack-o'-lantern. And in its light, we could see her long, crooked nose and the hairy warts on her wrinkled cheeks and the spider dangling from her hat. "Help!" Howie yipped. "What was that?" snarled the witch, turning her head. "Quiet," Chester said to Howie. "Do you want to end up as a Halloween treat?" And the witch's eyes darted all about, and then she shrugged and carried the jack-o'-lantern off to the kitchen. We didn't move. We hardly dared breathe. "What is she doing here?" Chester asked. "Why would she pick our house? There's only one reason I can think of." And I followed his eyes. "Bunnicula?" "The vampire rabbit and the witch. They're in cahoots, don't you see?" "I thought we lived in Centerville," said Howie. "Cahoots isn't a place," said Chester. "It means they're cooking something up together." We heard the sound of pots and pans in the kitchen. Maybe it's fudge," I said hopefully. "And maybe it's witch's brew," said Chester. "Follow me." And we crept across the living room floor and nudged the kitchen door open with our noses. And what we saw made us gasp. Burning candles filled the room. Something was bubbling in a huge pot on the stove. "I was right," Chester said. "She's concocting a witch's brew." And in a voice that crackled and croaked, the witch sang a strange melody as she stirred the pot. "Spells," Chester mumbled. "Chants," Chester rumbled. "Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble." All of a sudden, the witch stopped singing. She stopped stirring. She lifted her nose in the air and asked, "Now, where are those animals?" I never imagined that the three of us could fit behind the sofa at the same time, but no one stopped to measure. "My mother didn't raise me to be an ingredient," Chester said. "We've got to get out of here." And the kitchen door opened wide and light poured into the room, and the witch was clicking her tongue, calling for us, her head turning this way and that. And then she saw something. "Ah, Bunnicula," she said. She lifted the rabbit out of his cage and disappeared with him into the kitchen. "We've got to save him," said Howie. "We've got to save us," Chester said. "We might be next. The only way out is the pet door. We're just going to have to get past her." "Don't worry," I told Howie. "I'll save Bunnicula." Slowly and silently we made our way toward the kitchen door, and we pushed it open, and... "Oh, my stars!" cried the witch, throwing her hands and Bunnicula into the air. The bunny landed on my back. The witch laughed. Howie smacked into a table leg. Something fell to the floor with a crash, and we almost made it. But just as we reached the back door, it opened, and suddenly... 2 terrible, horrible creatures blocked our way. As fast as we could, we dashed to the front door, and monsters, even more horrible than the first, stopped us in our tracks. We're trapped, Chester moaned as the creatures gathered around us. We're doomed. We're surrounded by hideous Monroes? The lights came on. Mom, the skeleton cried. What a surprise. Grandma, shouted the beast with 3 eyes, 2 of which I recognized as Toby's. You weren't supposed to come until tomorrow, said the mummy, who sounded a lot like Pete. Well, I thought I would arrive early and surprise you, the witch said. You know Halloween is my favorite holiday. Well, your costume is great, said Mr. Monroe. But what's wrong with your voice? Oh, I've got an awful cold. And to think I traveled here in this storm. And then, just as I got to the house, the power went out. Well, I began to wonder if it wasn't a little crazy for me to have come at all. So I brought Bunnicula into the kitchen to keep me company while I made some hot cider. The next thing I knew, cider, said Toby. Let's have some. There's nothing like a little hot cider and some donuts to help you get over the jitters. Howie and I were beginning to relax at last and enjoy Halloween, even though Chester wasn't convinced the old lady was who she seemed to be. I know she looks a little like Mr. Monroe's mother under that costume and makeup, he said. And she sounds a little like Mr. Monroe's mother under that scratchy voice. But you know, she could be a witch pretending to be Mr. Monroe's mother, couldn't she? Nonsense, I said. Stop trying to scare us, said Howie. By the way, Mom, Mr. Monroe said, how was your flight? A little bumpy, but I still say flying is the only way to travel. Flying? Howie gasped. I was right, Chester cried. I didn't know whether Chester was right or not, but I wasn't taking any chances. Move over, you two, I said. It's gonna be a long night. The end. Well, I hope you liked that. I think that's a great story. And especially for those of you who know Bunnicula and know that story and know all the other characters than Monroe. So I hope you enjoyed it. All right, enjoy the little visual of the Jacks you're going to see right now. And I'll see you guys later. Bye. All right, guys, welcome to our Jack show. You just heard a wonderful story. Now we get to see all of the Jacks. And they miss you. We're going to do the best we can so you can see them here. Look at all the wonderful Jacks here in the library. I like these guys. This one's a new guy this year. And there's our other ones up here. Happy faces. And I like this guy too. He's a new one too. His light's not working very well, so I put an extra candle next to him. And this picture, I love the picture. Look at all the jack-o'-lanterns in the picture. And the little cat. Hello. Oh, I see a ghost in the window. And those big piece of fabric with all my jacks on there. Well, hello there, happy fella. How are you two? I think they're friends. Like Frog and Toad. They'll be Squash and Pumpkin. And this guy lights up, actually, if you kind of tap him a little. There it is. All right. And there's a couple more. There is a light in there. It's kind of faint. Let's see if we can. There it is. All right. This is the big guy. We all remember him. And this is something new I got this year too. Look at this cute little house. It's Trick or Treat Cafe. And there's a couple little jack-o'-lanterns right there. And my kitty cat jack-o'-lantern. That's my favorite one right now. There you go. That's a carved one, but it's not real. It's like a foam. And who's this hanging out by the books? Hello there. And here we go on our table full. The green one. I really like the green light. Oh. And there's the tall fella. He looks pretty happy too. I like that his eyes look like little moons. There we go. Hello. I like that face too. And here's another tall one, but he has a different face. I like his eyes look like apple slices. There we go. One of my favorites right there. It's kind of unique. He reminds me of that pumpkin in one of the books. It's called The Ugly Pumpkin, actually. I might read that to you guys. And this one is one of my favorites too. Look at him. He's great. All right, guys, I'm going to back up a little bit. One final look at all the jacks that we have this year. There we go. It's not the same without all the ones you guys do, but we're doing the best we can. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I'll see you around. Bye-bye.